pleased to be able to introduce to you Mike Serio, who is the Director of Public Affairs and Marketing for the DTV transition with the National Association of Broadcasters. The National Association of Broadcasters is a trade association that advocates on behalf of more than 8,300 free local radio television stations, as well as the broadcast networks. They advocate before Congress, the Federal Communications Commission, and the courts. As NAB's Director of Public Affairs Marketing for the DTV transition, Mr. Serio's job is to stay on top of the latest news about America's historic transition to digital television. On June 12, 2009, Americans will receive better pictures, better sound, more channels to choose from than ever before. So even if you don't have to do anything for the switch, there's a good chance that you or somebody in your community will have to. Mr. Serio also helps coordinate NAB's resources that help spread the word about the national transition to digital television. So, Mike, thank you very much for joining us, and we appreciate your time and are looking forward to learning more about the transition and how it's going.
Sure. Thank you very much. Since we got a small group, I can definitely be a lot more interactive with questions and answers. First off, anybody in the room have a television in their house that's over the air that uses an antenna? Okay. Okay. About an even split here. And how many of you have gotten a converter box or have gotten ready for DTV?
It's in the box yet.
Still in the box? Why is it still in the box?
Because I don't know how to hook it up. I didn't pay attention.
Ah, okay. Well, that is one of the things in fact, my own sister, I got her a converter box and said, you know, what's it doing in the closet still? Well, I thought I had to wait until June 12th.
Well, that I knew.
and that's one of the things that we hear from people too, is that they think that the date, all of a sudden television is going to magically switch to digital, and so you have to wait until that date to hook up the converter box. Digital is on the air now. In fact, all the stations here in Washington are broadcasting both in analog and digital. So, you know, as far as the terminology, when you hear the switch to digital, we're already on digital. It's really just the switch off of analog, which has been the standard since the early 1950s. I don't know if most of you are familiar with why it's happening. We get a lot of questions, you know, why is the government doing this, or why? Well, there are a number of reasons. First of all is that for public safety reasons, this is actually a recommendation from the 9/11 Commission. It goes all the way back to the mid to late 1990s, where opening up the spectrum available for police and fire to better communicate will be facilitated through the switch to digital. So digital uses less space over this wireless spectrum. And so television stations can, by using less space, they get more of that space to public, police and fire for better communication. So the public service benefits are tremendous. And then also you have that digital allows stations to send out more channels with the same amount of space. So for instance, Channel 4 here is the NBC affiliate in Washington. In digital, they can send out 3 separate channels, 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, over the same amount of space. So once you have the converter box and with your antenna, you scan it, you find that you have more channels. The reception, whereas with analog you'd have snow sometimes, or the reception may not be that great. With digital, it's crystal clear. Once you get it, you have it crystal clear, and there's no really reception issues. Occasionally with some weather, you might have some pixelation, or if there's high wind or severe weather like that. Now, and this relates to the rural communities, what's called a cliff effect. I don't know if any of you have heard of the cliff effect at all. So what happens with digital is, in analog, as you go further away from the station's broadcast tower, the reception gets weaker and weaker, but even if you're 40 or 50 miles out, you still might get something. It may not be a great picture, but you get a little something. So you have folks that fall into that category, that have been receiving an adequate picture for years, but it's not really that great, but they're satisfied with it. With digital, when you get out there, let's say beyond, and it depends on the station, but let's say 40 miles, if you get beyond that, there's nothing. It's just a cliff effect. So all of a sudden you get a great picture with good reception, and then boom, it's what's called the cliff effect, where you don't get the reception from that mileage out. So that's one of the issues that particularly affects rural communities as you get farther away from the signal. And I actually have I apologize, the quality is not that great, but you can pass this around. I don't know, and I can pass this around too. But what you have here is the dotted line around, and this is an example from Syracuse, the station there. The dotted line is analog, and the solid line is digital. So you have folks that fall in between those lines that are either, it's a diamond shape or it's a triangle. A diamond means that they're not going to get that particular station anymore, but they're going to get a station from an adjacent market that has a stronger digital signal. And the triangle means that, unfortunately, they're not going to get a signal at all. And that's going to be the case for some folks after June 12th, at least initially in the short term, that all of a sudden they may not have access to their NBC station anymore. They have been getting a poor, adequate signal, and now they're not going to get one because of that cliff effect issue. And I'll talk about in a second some of the ways that they're trying to rectify that situation through legislation and also some government grants. However, in the short term, there are going to be folks that are inconvenienced in the next few months and years. There are things that they're trying to do at the government level to enhance the service, enhance the coverage area for some of those folks that are going to lose coverage. And those maps, by the way, dtv.gov is the FCC's digital TV website. If you go there, there's a box on the right-hand side where you click on reception in my area. You put in your zip code or your city and state. It'll tell you what stations you're going to receive and what stations you're not going to receive. And you can actually see those maps, like the one I'm passing around right now. And you can, for every station in your market area, to see which stations, folks living in certain areas are going to have trouble with and which ones they're not going to.
What was that again, W?
dtv.gov.
Okay.
And it's really a great website. They spent a lot of money in updating it, and it looks terrific. And you can also, besides just looking at the reception maps, you put in your zip code, and it'll tell you there are walk-in centers available in certain communities. You can get in-home assistance. AmeriCorps, they're training their AmeriCorps folks to go to homes and help folks hook up the converter boxes and help with reception issues. There's also the toll-free number, which if you've seen the commercials, and I know they're on a lot now, but it's 1-888-CALL-FCC. And there are about, at certain points, there are about 4,000 operators. In fact, later this week, there's going to be a shut-off test on Thursday that a number of stations around the country are going to participate in. A shut-off test is that for folks watching in analog still, they'll see a graphic come up on the screen saying that if you see this graphic, you're not ready for DTV, call this number, 1-888-CALL-FCC, or go to dtv.gov to get some more information. So,
what if you got a built-in digital tuner?
well, then you should be okay if you're watching in digital. Now, some folks, if they have a newer TV, it has a digital tuner. However, it also has an analog tuner in it. The newer TVs have both. So they could be watching in analog, even though they think they're watching in digital. The way you know is that if you have an antenna and you're watching a digital TV set, then the channels you see should have a dash or a period between the numbers. So it'll be 4.1 or 4-1. So you have to make sure that your television you're watching on the digital side.
Even after tune to 12?
Right. Like you said, if you have a television with a digital tuner, then you should see the channel numbers like that. Now again, that's different if your television is hooked up to cable or satellite. Again, those folks shouldn't be affected at all by this transition. Again, we're only talking about folks that receive an antenna over the air. So